And finally, we are very excited to have Eric Rotkow and Melanie Adams presenting Workflow Automation, a game changer for in-house agencies today. Eric is co-founder and executive vice president at Coffee Dunn, which is a marketing operations and digital transformation firm. Eric leads Coffee Dunn's advisory consulting practice and leads key client engagements. He has 15 years of experience in agencies, marketing research, and process and technology transformation. Eric has worked with various clients in B2B and B2C firms, including Walmart, Target, Nike, T. Rowe Price, Ralph Lauren, Kraft, and Jockey. Melanie, on the other hand, is VP of Marketing Finance at Stage Store. Stage Stores is an 850-store retailer in 40 states, which you will hear more about in today's webinar. Melanie's responsibilities include overseeing all marketing planning and budget solutions and marketing operations. Melanie has spent the last 3 years in this role, and prior to was in merchandising for 10 years. It's truly a pleasure to have the both of you on the line with us today to share your knowledge and your story. Thank you for spending the time with us. I'm going to hand it off to you now so that you can take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. We are very happy to have the opportunity to do this today. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sound great, Eric.
Okay, and hopefully you can see my screen as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started. We have a good bit of content to get through today. We know this is a very important topic for the in-house agency forum, and so we tried to bring a lot of our learnings from the last decade as a company to the forefront here and share some experiences and some learnings. We're also very happy to have Melanie Adams with us today as well, who represents Stage Stores, who has been down this workflow journey over the last couple of years. So, Melanie, do you want to say hello?
Yeah. Hey, good morning. We'll as we go through this, we'll tell you about a pretty good story that we have here. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Okay, thank you. So let's get going. If you can see the agenda here, we want to quickly talk about why workflow is so important, and then just very quickly a little bit about Coffee Dunn, and then we'll get into the meat of it. Workflow, what game are we playing? That's where we'll talk about some trends and some lessons learned. And then workflow, how to play the game, really a methodology and an approach going forward. No matter if you're new to workflow or you've been going down the path the last 2 years and are ready to reinvigorate. So we'll look at both of those scenarios. And then after that, we have a pretty practical, tactical case study from Stage Stores walking through their journey. And then we hope to have some time for some Q&A. Great. Okay, so why is workflow a priority? Why are we here today? Why does the IHAF commit so much time and energy to this topic? And so obviously you're calling in because it is important to you and your in-house agency. And so we want to start at the highest level. I think we all know as creatives and marketers and consumers, the nature of demand has absolutely changed. A lot of it has to do with the way we interact with brands. A lot of it has to do with the way we interact with each other, person-to-person interactions, largely around the convergence of technology. It manifests in our cell phones. And I'm sure many of you are calling in on your cell phones today. And so from that, buyers expect automated services to tap into communities for insights and services with apps. It is a new world for consumers, for buyers, for demand. And so we have to ask ourselves, what does that mean as creatives and marketers? And we really have to rethink our organizations. If you look down the right there, some pretty compelling statistics on the state of change right now. How do we activate multi-channel programming? How do we rethink customer engagement from personal selling to more automated interactions? And how do we recast our organizations, our processes, our operations to make all this new technology and all these new types of relationships happen? And so as you sit watching this presentation, a lot of it has to do with taking workflow and attaching it to what's going on in the world. And if we move the conversation forward, what does this really mean for in-house agencies? to respond to this new normal, we need better engagement with internal clients for omni-channel execution. It doesn't just start at intake, it starts in planning. And so if we're going to pull off omni-channel communications, we have to have better engagement. We have to rethink workflow for create once, publish everywhere. It's not just about what's the best workflow or what's the best process for a job, for a piece of direct mail. It's about how do we create digitized content to publish in multiple channels. And so the workflow has to enable that. Moving forward, process coordination with outside content creators. So with all the specialized capabilities in the world today, for an in-house agency, you're not working in a vacuum. You're collaborating with the different pockets around your organizations, and you're coordinating with outside resources. So how does workflow impact that? And finally, we have to manage the network of in-house agency team members as a business. We'll spend a few minutes talking about that, but the idea is that creative and marketing is different than other parts of your organization, and you need to manage it like a business, and workflow enables that. And if we look at what we're calling an in-house agency network, I think we would all acknowledge that, of course, marketing and creative is different than other parts of the organization. It's not manufacturing. It's not an assembly line of activities. It's more about how does an in-house agency account manager engage, if you're looking at the left side of the screen, how do they engage your clients that are trying to execute pretty sophisticated marketing strategies and creative strategies. And then if you look internally to the right side, to whatever your in-house agency looks like, there was a network of people. Creative comes together by people-to-people interactions. Looking at people's personal networks and all sorts of resources. That's how creative happens. It's more of a network, iterative approach to creating content than a linear factory idea. And so these characteristics make marketing creative workflow especially challenging. As we'll talk more about, workflow requires a very thoughtful approach to how you design processes and select a system and choose to automate. And so what we're trying to say here is that workflow must enable this network view of the world. And that's where a lot of tools and a lot of first-generation implementations have been challenged. So moving forward, managing creative as a business. Workflow is a key part of that. It's a foundational ability for agency leaders to manage internal or interaction with clients and to evaluate performance of individual team members. And so to do that, your account managers, you might call them by a different name, they're working with certain clients across your organizations, understanding their needs and committing to some sort of time, cost, and quality. And as you do that, the account managers engage project managers or traffic managers on the inside of the agency to deliver on those promises, on what the client's looking for. And finally, the project managers and traffic managers are working with creative teams and holding them accountable. And all of this can happen with a workflow tool. And so that's why we're here today, to manage that network and to manage the in-house agency as a business. Okay, and so today's discussion will be largely around process and approach and change management. We'll talk a little bit about technology because it's critical. But again, this is very much a technology agnostic discussion. Okay, so very quickly, who is Coffee Dunn and why do we have such a strong point of view? Very quickly, Coffee Dunn is here to help marketing respond to the new normal, and within that, creative services. And we do that by helping marketing lead the charge to digital transformation. Part of that is what we call organizational transformation. We advise marketing and creative leaders faced with all the challenges we've discussed, respond. We'll talk more about how that happens in a moment. The next area is technology implementation, which a lot of the learnings today come from that, implementing technology, digital asset management, and other solutions for creative services. We also have campaign automation services. So for those in-house agencies and marketing organizations who do their own marketing automation, we do quite a bit in that area. And finally, the end-to-end process toolkit. Over the years of doing this work, we've evolved some pretty some pretty sophisticated and light models that are easy to implement for how organizations plan campaigns and execute omni-channel processes. And so, these are not distinct services. Almost every project requires, a little bit from each of the areas. But for in-house agencies, we do have an integrated view of marketing and creative. We try to break down silos for U.S. and global companies. We do a lot of workflow work, digital asset management work, and all the types of systems and processes you see there that relate to creative services. Our team has 10 plus years in the space. We work in a number of different industries: retail, CPG, financial services, life sciences, and manufacturing. Our team members, and this is where I believe is our special sauce, a lot of our team members come from agency and corporate marketing, in addition to technology consultants. So that's what we offer here in terms of lessons learned. And we offer sustainable improvements, not just installing software. And you can see on the handful of our clients to the right there. Okay, so we'll transition a little bit further. Workflow, a game changer. But before we get into it, what game is it that we're playing? The IHAF does a great job at keeping its finger on the pulse of its members. And today, as we sit here in 2014, the IHAF, about half of the IHAF members have implemented workflow. That number is from 2014. I have to assume it's a little bit higher now. More than 60% characterize their processes as efficient, and the volume of projects is substantial. In the tens of thousands in some cases. While processes, so all of that, while processes that stay within the agency are thought to be good, when it comes to looking at processes that extend outside of the agency, there are some challenges. And if you could read some of the stats on there, that's kind of one of the takeaways there. And that'll be a key point for the next part of the discussion. But what we want to take away here is looking at the data. It seems that while in-house agencies are measuring internal customer satisfaction, the business benefits of agency workflow solutions are not necessarily a part of the dialogue. Realizing this is not true in every case, the benefits traditionally sought by in-house agencies tend to be more oriented towards project management and traffic to replace job jackets and create some visibility. And so what we're seeing here is a focus within the agency, and not necessarily a focus on the greater business benefits offered to the organization. And when I say business benefits, I mean the types of things that you see on the screen now. Omni-channel speed to market, overcoming excessive cycle times and missed in-market dates, and so on. Brand consistency across internal creative and external creative. Ability to manage spend, not just within the agency, but the creation of content that has to do with outside the agency as well. Visibility to make sure that projects and programs and campaigns are aligned to executive priorities. And then finally, resource integration and alignment. And so we'll see a transition from looking at agency benefits in terms of features and functions of the software and the process to more business-oriented benefits that you can deliver to your organization as leaders of the agency. And so the issue, to draw a finer point on it, is that if you're not looking for the right benefit, you'll not get the desired result. I think looking back at the last 10 years in doing workflow for in-house agencies, a common misstep of many first-generation workflow implementations has been that the premise that let's get our house in order, let's get the agency in order before we look outside the four walls of the agency. And so we'll take it a step further, but in-house agencies are not on an island. Workflow solutions need to be viewed as not only automating the work within the agency, but also connecting the agency to upstream internal customers and partners and downstream vendors to achieve the substantive benefits that we're talking about. And frankly, as you sit here as an in-house agency leader, the ability to think in terms of the enterprise, not just the in-house agency, is a real advantage you have over external agencies who don't have that benefit to be on the same context or platform. So we see this as a major transition in the life cycle of in-house agency workflow.
Yeah, and one thing when we started this, we needed one source of the truth. So we had, 4 different processes, 5 different processes. They were all siloed and very manual. And so if an ad changed, a date changed, it was kind of on a need-to-know basis, or at least that's what the people thought. So, we really needed one place where all this info came together. Because obviously there's one date that can't change, right? The in-home date of print, or when you go live on a digital ad, that date can't move. And so if any of the pieces, the creative team, the marketing team, the production team, if anybody missed a beat, it really kind of screwed everything else up, and it put pressure on the other teams. So we really needed an end-to-end, everybody talking to each other. We actually even named this the advertising communication tool, because even though it's a technology system, it was really where we would all come together and see everything in one place.
Great. Thank you for that anecdote, Melanie. I think, as we go through this, Melanie can provide some great real-world anecdotes even before we get to the, to the actual stage case study. So that's great. So you can probably get a hint that the stage implementation was a little bit broader than the in-house agency itself. So more to come on that. So to take it a step further, to understand the issue, or look a little bit of the history of workflow. On the left-hand side, you can see, the pretty common traditional functionality that a lot of agencies seek when they're looking for a workflow tool: task automation, time tracking. Some of the tools have good digital asset management systems, review and annotations, and so on. On the right-hand side, different software vendors have evolved to appeal to different, call them priorities. There are certain solutions that are geared towards agencies, full agency management, others that are more oriented towards project management, and others that are called resource management that are a little bit broader. But now in 2015, change is afoot, and other forces are at play, making it increasingly difficult to find the right solution that gives the business benefits you're looking for. And so looking back, if you're looking at the screen, this is the traditional way to look at it. But if you follow the business press, there's a lot of software trends going on in this space in the enterprise software world. Just to name a few that I think are relevant here, the tools are shifting from point solutions in favor of platform benefits, vendor consolidation to own the platform, and a shift to cloud as a trigger for switching. And so what this means is that for agencies that are seeking an agency solution, depending on who your vendor is and how they think about their solutions and the types of agencies they target, chances are, if not already, either the software vendor is going to start building into being more of a marketing platform or a content platform, or it's already been acquired by a larger software vendor. To name a few, Infor, Microsoft, Oracle, and many others, and Salesforce. They're all consolidating the solutions that serve marketing and creative and content creation and distribution. And so if I tie this back to the discussion of about 5 minutes ago, it lends itself very nicely, if you think in terms of the platform, which is the way the software vendors are going, the ability to get on the same platform as your internal clients, marketing, and others, product, to be on the same platform means that you can deliver the business benefits and not just focus on the agency itself. And so the two forces, I'll call them, align nicely. Okay.
So, and I'll just chime in on, on the cloud. So I don't even really know what the cloud is. We just know that we love it, because you're not at the mercy of a network server. We have some issues sometimes in this building. The other thing is our vendors or internal and external partners will have access limited. I mean, obviously the systems you can set up different kinds of access. And then, we have buyers that are in market every single month, and so to try and get them to proof an ad, now they can do it where they can use their iPad to prove a lot of the collateral. So, and the other thing is we, every year we put together a business continuity or a disaster recovery, and so it was very structured. If I'm in Texas, so we have hurricanes. So if something were to happen, we had this long, all these places, faxing phones to call people and get info. Well, this is all in the system now. So not only is the documentation of what to do, but all of our assets, all of our jobs, all of the task management is all it's all in the cloud.
Great, and I would say thank you for that, Melanie. I would also add that the cloud, aside from all these other trends, moving to the cloud is probably the single greatest trigger for switching for that reason. It's easier, it's cheaper, it doesn't take as much effort to maintain. And so, I think if you're on the call right now and you have a solution that's not in the cloud, it probably will be soon. All the vendors seem to be going that way. Okay, so now we're going to, I fully acknowledge we were a little bit in the clouds there about trends, but we want to make sure we bring it down to earth a little bit, talk about how to play the game. Many of you are already down the workflow path, and we have some learnings for you there, but for those of you that are new and you've called in to this call to get some words of wisdom, with air quotes, we tried to provide a handful of learnings here, and I'll go ahead and show all of them to you, and I'd like to speak to them a little bit. So for newbies, learn from others who have been down the path. There's a lot of folks on the call who have been down the path, and there's a lot of consultants that have looked across a lot of industries over a decade in doing this. So there's a lot to learn, and there's ability to avoid a lot of mistakes. So starting on the left-hand side, get the lens right. Set organizational context with the agency, internal customers, internal partners, and external resources. A few minutes ago, we talked about that in-house agencies don't exist on an island, work within a greater context. And so before you start to think about process and technology, we suggest that you really think about what we call is the operating model. What's the creative and what's the marketing operating model? To get that right and to get buy-in with the leadership before you head far down the path. Number two, we really urge an emphasis on process and change management. The software is critical, and it has to meet certain requirements, but the process is what makes the business run, and the change management is what ensures people will use it. To take it to the extreme in some instances, for some clients, we've implemented process well ahead of any workflow technology. And of course, the reason is there is you can get people thinking and working a certain way before the team is asked to adopt a tool. Okay. The third idea, build an experienced team. While I'm sure you do have people that know process and know technology very well, it's not necessarily intuitive for how to implement some of these solutions. And so, whether it's from the vendor or somebody that's not associated with a particular vendor, like myself, or people who have been on the corporate side and have done this a number of times, there are people out there who know how to do this. And so we urge you to engage people who have been down the path once or twice before you start. Similarly, process first. We'll talk more about methodology, the sequence of steps that you should go through, but we really do see the process as the equalizer. Process is the way you design your organization. Process is the way that you define technology requirements. And so really, process first, we can't say it enough. Now, if we were doing this presentation 10 years ago and we showed process samples, you would see very complicated process diagrams. Over the years, I think we've learned the lesson, as all others have, don't over-engineer marketing process. And if you don't over-engineer the process, you won't over-engineer the workflow. Moving on, this ties to the trends that we talked about, but if you don't have a legacy of another solution, there's the ability to think very forward-looking and get a platform or a solution that's going to propel you forward. And a lot of that has to do with the platform for the connectivity of the cloud, and usability, and ease of speed of implementation. And then finally, think end-to-end, which is a theme throughout this whole presentation. A lot of times agencies will pursue workflow to get better at execution, but good execution happens from good planning. And so when we say end-to-end, we mean all the way from campaign planning that usually manifests or ends in some sort of brief to how that triggers execution, starting with prioritization, intake, content creation, and distribution. And so while you might not implement everything at one time, the processes should be considered end-to-end. Okay. So those are the lessons for newbies. If we move on, as I look at the slide title, I'm thinking maybe we should have chosen a different header. But yeah, but old timers, for those considering second or third deployments of workflow, some lessons. The first one, expand enterprise perspective. And so the assumption here is that you have focused on getting the agency house in order, and now it's time to think more broadly. And to do that, like I said a moment ago, we think of this idea of an operating model. And we'll see actually a stage stores example in just a moment. But that operating model is oftentimes the key to overcoming organizational boundaries. Optimize reporting lines based on facts. So now that your process is better, and now that you have some data to support how the process really flows, look at your organization again. Redesign the organization or tweak the organization based on facts. We see that to be hugely beneficial. It's a way to have those kind of reporting discussions to keep it unemotional and non-political with the facts that come out of workflow. And then moving on, achieve next level of operational maturity. So now that you have the data and your process is becoming more mature, there's some pretty advanced things you can think about doing. Capacity planning, spend optimization, utilization optimization, flexible staffing models, and more broadly, analytics and reporting. As far as our clients go, you know, I think the more sophisticated clients, more mature clients are doing some of these things. Not a lot of companies are doing all of these things, so there's a lot of opportunity there. And now that you've gotten to know your vendors very well, a lot of them have changed their licensing terms and things like that. And so depending on the terms of your contracts, it's always a good idea to engage your vendor partners and talk about service levels and pricing and their roadmaps to take you to the next level. And while you very well might have a very good relationship with your technology vendor, you should understand your switching costs. We think that's very important. And just a couple more. Expand common process to planning processes. And so if you're not familiar with the term common process, where possible, we believe that workflow should not be media type specific, no matter where you sit in your organization. The same process should apply at a high level. And so assuming that's been done through the first generation of workflow, there's an opportunity to reach back in the planning process and extend that common process into the product clients, into your internal communication clients, into your marketing clients, and so on. Now that you have the information to do that. And finally, a more technology-oriented view. If you're happy with your solution, your vendor, and you want to seek some other benefits, whether it's related to digital asset management or marketing planning or something like that, if there's other tools around the organization, it might be time to explore integrations. As an aside, you know, we believe integrations, if you're going to do them, should be kept simple, and so on. Okay. Okay, so we looked at some lessons learned for newbies, some for old timers, and that leads us to folklore. If you're calling in, I'm sure you had some thoughts about workflow going in that may or may not be something that we've learned over the years. And so what we want to do here is go through about half a dozen what we're calling folklore, and tick through these very quickly, and then we can get into the stage case study. I think we're doing okay on time. And so as we go through these, I'll give my consultant view, and then I'll ask Melanie to provide her real-world practical experience as it relates to these. Okay. And so let's get into it. Number one, selecting the right software is everything. And I'm here to tell you that the software is important. You'll want to look at things like ease of use, usability, cost to maintain, and all those things. But that's not the reason, that's not the first step. Like we talked about before, the first step is really this operating model idea and this process idea. The technology is critical, but it can't be the primary focus of the project, although that's how the users will see it because they're interacting with the workflow. So Melanie, you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. So I would say, the system is only as good as the people that are using it. So, you need to kind of take that into consideration when you're looking at it. It's also what's right for today may not be right for tomorrow. So, we look at a system that we would be able to implement, but then grow with and add steps and add other systems talking to it. So, you just can't say, hey, this is perfect for today, because obviously, particularly if you're in retail, I mean, it's constantly changing, so you need a system that kind of will change with you.
Great, and so that's a great point. And so if the process is right and the process is evolved, the system needs to be able to do that, right? And so that's a great point. Okay, number two, focusing only within the four walls of the agency to keep it simple is the best approach. As we said before, getting your house in order is important, but it needs to be done in the context of upstream and downstream teams. Coffee Dunn, having seen a number of examples over the years, too many times we've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars of rework happen because some of these other groups were considered outside of the agency. And so the work starts well before intake is the notion here.
Right, and we have so many partners, right, internal and external. So we've got media agencies, we've got digital agencies that we work with. We have ad agencies that we do broadcast production with. We also have a whole team of merchants up there. So, and they're very involved in a lot of this process. So we couldn't just look at marketing because there are just too many other people that that play and have to be part of this, end-to-end process.
Great. Okay, great. Number three, the software vendor consulting services are marketing process experts. Depending on the software you select, the vendor may have services consultants or may not. In our experience, we sometimes work in collaboration with the software vendors services folks, and other times we don't. But the lesson here is software vendor consultants are focused on software and oftentimes have a technology background. It's important for those designing the workflow understand the nature of creative. It is nonlinear. It's iterative. You need consultants that might come from creative, know processes because they've actually worked them. And so to come up with a workflow solution that really enables people and helps people do their jobs versus encumbers them with a heavy technology solution.
Right, and I would say, just quick here, it's not really about the technology. I mean, obviously that's what guides everybody, but it's really about the people and the process that you built and how they can utilize the system. And I'll throw out when we get into more of the case study about the change management, but really it's, the technology is a piece of it. It's really the people that are in there. And again, I'll say it really is only as good as the people that are using it.
Great. Number four, a highly customizable system is best. I think to talk through this one, just to define our terms a little bit, if you've worked with enterprise software, there's really two notions here. The term customizable largely means that you actually have to write code to make the system work the way you want it. At the other end of the spectrum is this idea of configurable. And configurable means somebody like me who couldn't write a piece of code if their life depended on it can configure a system, with checkboxes and radio buttons and things like that. And so what that means is that if you have a configurable system versus a customizable system, you can have it up and running quicker because there's less technical work. It's less costly to maintain because your people can tweak it over time. You don't have to engage a technical resource to write code. And so, that coupled with what we talked about before, having this configurable system in the cloud enables a lot of in-house agencies and marketing organizations to really be more nimble and evolve the solution rapidly, which is critical.
Right. So this is one of the reasons we chose the person or the software that we did, because they had a finance system, and we'll get into more of that later. But there was a prettier vendor, a prettier dashboard, but the system that we chose actually had a finance system, and I'm certainly not a techie, so to have to write code and to have to do all those steps, certainly don't have the time or the money or the energy to do that. And we also needed some structure. So if it's an out-of-the-box solution that you can configure it to your needs, there's structure, and it helps the team so that everyone's kind of not going off on their own way. There's certain limitations that actually liked, because it kind of kept everybody on the same page.
Great. So Melanie, you just reminded me that I'm going to try to move through these faster because I want to make sure we have a good amount of time to the case study. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So number 5, marketing and creative processes are just like any other business processes. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but if somebody comes from merchandising or operations or finance or has a great Six Sigma background, the processes that we're talking about to create content and develop great creative are different, and not a lot of people get that.
Yeah, and I will just chime into your assembly line that you said a little while ago. Yeah, it's not, and particularly, if you're in retail, it's always about change. So there's no black or white. It's constantly changing. So I was in merchandising for a long time, and marketing is certainly so different. Obviously, we have the same goals, and that's driving sales, but it's every day looks different as well. Great.
And finally, number 6. And we'll get a lot more into this in the upcoming case study in just a second, but once the software is implemented, we simply train everyone and move on. Certainly, if you've been through this before, you already know that, but for those of you just setting out on this journey, this is not a find a system, configure it, and train everybody and move on. This really is a journey, and so we'll see that more in just a moment.
Yeah, 1.5 years later, we're still training and changing and training and changing. So yeah, it's not a one and done.
Yeah. Great. And so this represents the folklore. So I'm curious, as you sit there watching the presentation, which ones have you found more unintuitive than others? But I encourage you to think about these as you look for workflow solutions. One more concept before we get into the case study, and in fact, this is kind of the guide for the case study. And so after this, we will get into the staged case study. Over the years at Coffee Dunn, we've evolved this model to implement workflow solutions and other technologies in a way that aligns to the lessons that we've talked to in the last about 40 minutes. And so, as you sit here and look at these lessons, don't think it's a bunch of ad hoc words of wisdom or learnings. This methodology is a way to unify what we believe to be the proper approach, and as we go through the case study, we'll talk through it. But going top to bottom, we believe the first step after your business model and your customer experience, what is the in-house agency operating model? How does the in-house agency work with your internal clients, your partners like legal to review content, outside resources. So at a high level, how does everyone work together? And we'll look at an example of that in a second. And then based on that model, what are our planning processes? You know, what's a program, what's a campaign, who's charged to define those, and who's accountable for, if there's a brief concept, making sure the brief is good, they can inform good execution. And with the planning concepts in place, let's get into execution. And so if you are trending towards this idea of create once, publish everywhere, how do we set up execution processes so that we can deliver content across multiple channels? And it's not necessarily intuitive how to do that, right? And so if you go through that process, operating model, planning processes, then execution processes, that really sets you up for good. Moving to the left side there, looking at your organization, designing organizations based on process is a very good way to do it, to avoid a lot of abstract political challenges and things like that. And then moving to the right, which is really the reason we're here today, is based on your planning processes and your execution processes, how should we think about technology, and in this case, workflow? Okay, so you can see it's very much top-down, process first, and then technology. Okay. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we want to ask Melanie to give an overview of stage stores, and we're actually going to look at the actual process that they went through, the methodology, and the results from an implementation that started, what, about 2 years ago, Melanie?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we, as I think Emily said, we have 850 stores in 40 states. We do operate under 5 nameplates. So we have Bell's, we have Palais Royal, we have Stage, we have Peebles, we have Goodies. And so that, just in that fact, obviously it makes our business model very complex. We also have about 15,000 employees, and our average store size is pretty small. So we bring brands to small towns. So we operate on, it's pretty much a full department store, but in about 18,000 square foot of selling. When I started here, actually I've been with the company for about 14 years, but I was at one of our other divisions, and we consolidated back to Houston. So my first task was, you have an archaic 1985 finance system. We need to get rid of that. First of all, there was hardly anybody left to fix it, and again, it was really green bar. So so that was the challenge, and basically what happened was, as we started talking to people, obviously we hired Coffee Dunn as our consultant, realized it wasn't just a finance system we needed. We really needed it end-to-end, because we were a very siloed organization, and we found in some surveys, and we'll talk about that in a second, that our communication wasn't great, and so people felt that they were left out, not in the loop, and none of that was intentional. It was just, the nature of a quick retail business.
Great.
So just to show you, this slide actually really doesn't show the complexity. These are actually 3 completely different pieces from a content standpoint. The Bells was basically for our better brands. The Stage was we did a rebranding campaign and renamed a handful of stores from Bells to Stage. And then Peebles was really it's one of our smaller nameplates, but these are actually 3 different pieces, but you figure each one has all 5 nameplates. So right there, you're looking at least 15 versions just on this page. So we get very, very complex. And then our new, one of the new things that we're working on is really segmenting and really going after the customer and targeting her. So we're getting into some variable printing, some digital printing, and so again, but each of those versions has to have, there's five nameplates. So we're in a complex business. We run an omni-channel. Obviously, that's under our Stage nameplate. But when we're doing emails, every email we do again has 5 different nameplates. So it's a complex business.
Yeah, great. So Stage, which has a number of brands under its umbrella, like Melanie is saying, really. There's a promotion in market every day of the year.
Yes.
And, it's in many states, and it's really omni-channel, and so the level of complexity is pretty high. Yeah. Great. And so just to talk through the methodology very quickly, you can see as far as the navigation in the upper right-hand corner there, When we started working with Sage and Melanie, there was the opportunity to work at the highest level and decide how marketing works with merchandising. And we'll get into that in a moment. But there's really, what is the mission? What's the vision for marketing? And so, Melanie, would you like to speak to how this is?
So one thing that this slide doesn't tell you is that we really had a new CMO, 4 new VPs. So there was a lot of change going on, and a lot of people had different ideas. We all came from different places, and so it was really the executive team in marketing that kind of had to sit down, and we had to start at the beginning. Like again, start with the basics. What do we value? Like what are we trying to get across? How from a customer standpoint, but also from the people that we work with, and then who do we want to be? So we needed to kind of lay that out too, and then what, on the we must, like what we can't lose sight of, with all this change and everything going on in our new, new branding, what has to stay consistent? What do we have to execute, or the rest of it kind of, doesn't matter. So it was, we started over. I mean, we started at the very, very beginning.
Great. And so if this represents the beginning, defining what marketing is, based on this, if you go to the next step, is the idea of this operating model that I spoke about a few minutes ago. But so based on the vision and the mission, how does marketing think about what it does? And so, Melanie.
Right, and so this slide basically is just, I mean, it's just showing truly the complexity, and it's not just, we're not just, the people in marketing. Obviously, we have planning, just in marketing we have planning, we have creative, we have production, we have CRM, we have digital. But then when you look at, we've got external agencies, we've got internal agencies, we've got legal, we've got store ops, and obviously we have the customer. So it's a complex model. It's just not a one size fits all, and it's just not, we can't just think about what we do down in, in our neck of the woods.
Great. And just, to speak more broadly than just retail, this idea of an operating model, it really does help the marketing leadership determine how to engage other parts of the organization. And so retail, this is one example. In financial services, how does content come from the people who write the financial perspectives, points of view? How does that permeate to the marketing writers, and how does that turn into reusable content? And so this idea of an operating model is very powerful. So we find that to be probably one of the more compelling parts of the methodology before we get into process. And so we'll get into process in just a second, but if you can see the slide there, the white boxes represent different capabilities or areas of work within an in-house agency or within marketing. And you can see that the way they're grouped is kind of the bridge to process. And so it keeps the whole process exercise from being abstract. It's actually based on what marketing and creative services want to be doing. Okay. And so before we look at more examples of work product, Melanie can speak to a little bit of the horizon of the steps that it went through.
Sure. So if you just look at this slide, I mean, basically, in a nutshell, it's telling you it's a multi-phase process, right? It's just not a quick, it took us about a year from starting the process to actually implementation. You need patience. I mean, there's a lot of change management going on, and obviously we faced in our group that you had 4 new VPs and a new CMO in addition to all this change. So our group was a little bit freaked out at times, so we just had to consistently communicate with them, involve them, make them feel like they were a part of this, and actually that helped us because there's no way I could have built the system myself. I mean, you basically really need all of the peeps doing that. So and we had plenty of different one-on-one meetings, group meetings. This was just not a single person. This was a lot of people and a lot of work. But it's definitely a multi-phase process.
Great. Okay, and speaking of that, Melanie.
Sure. This slide I would think is probably the most important, at least to me, the change management piece. Again, if you don't get everybody engaged in this, it doesn't matter what system you choose, or it doesn't matter how great your process looks. If you've got anybody that's not 100% on board, you're going to struggle. So, you know, one of the top left is really, we surveyed everybody, and we kept surveying them at different levels, and it showed management, you know, how well we were doing in communicating. You know, we got the biggest response from the creative team, because of that, you know, again, it's not necessarily their nature, you know, it was probably more difficult for them. They wanted guidance as to how to, you know, how to implement them into this one long process. So you can see on the bottom left, that was really one of the survey sheets. So again, we were doing this constantly just so we could measure how change management was going, and then also how our communication. And then if you see the accelerated roadmap, you can see this was not again, this wasn't a 3-month process, this wasn't a 6-month process. And again, it's not over. We've been live in the system since a year ago, September, and still even today we were talking about things we need to change or add, or different, you know, additional workflow for social and digital. So it's not this is an ongoing, and I don't foresee it, you know, as we change in retail, this will keep changing.
Great. And just so as we get in from operating model to change management to process, as I said before, you know, we believe that process first. On the left-hand side here is this idea of a hierarchy, which really is a jumping-off point for process discussions. And so on the planning side, how do you think about campaigns and seasons? And on the execution side, how do you think about jobs? And so that's generally how we set up the discussions, but Melanie can talk through the realities of her experience.
Sure. Again, yeah, I mean, I wish we had more time, because again, this is only, you know, these are 4 out of probably 100 slides. But really, we took certain people, so we had steering committee groups, and we're still meeting, those people are still meeting quarterly right now, and then we also had one-on-one. So we didn't want anybody to feel like they weren't participating, and we also needed everybody's, you know, help in building what this looked like. So it's funny though, because, you know, when we first started, I think we had 8 different types of jobs, you know, and so as we move a year later, we now have 17, and actually just this week, we really looked at, we need more digital broken out. Social, we have a digital job, but we really need social, but then even more so, we need Instagram, we need Pinterest, so you know, what started out as 8 is now 17, and probably, you know, at the first of the year will be 25 to 30. So again, it keeps, we keep changing, and we keep figuring out new and better ways to improve the workflow.
Great. And so with just a few minutes left, I think, as you can see here, there was an organizational and process component that was important, and the vendor selection was very rigorous. And so I don't really have a lot of time to go through it. I want to make sure we look at the workflow component, but just to summarize, Stage went through a very formal process of evaluating different vendors and scored them, and you can see here. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to talk through it. But Melanie, just to make sure we get to the workflow part, I wanted to make sure that we talk through this.
Sure. So this is really about our platform, and again, we were looking for, this is a rollout process. This isn't just a, hey, it's fixed and we're good. So what we looked at was, okay, what do we need now, and then what do we need for future? So the 2 columns on the either of the right, I mean, we needed a marketing resource management, which we are full blown, and we're obviously fully vested in that, and then the spend financial, because again, we have one of the in-house, in marketing, we have an in-house business office, so we do all of our finances. So those were the 2 most important, and the 2 in the middle are really more that phase, kind of a phase 2 and phase 3, so that we can actually start putting everything in, and certainly have one integrated with everything in that. So you know, it's phase 1, 2, and 3, and so we're starting to look into the gray areas. And the other thing is reporting. So you obviously need all the data in the system to be able to start reporting. So we're a year in from a data standpoint. So that will be also one of our next steps.
Great. And so if we look at the actual platform, we pulled some actual views of the workflow. If Melanie would like to speak to the workflow.
Sure. So the big slide is actually a campaign. So we built a couple different workflows, right? Because I think a campaign, obviously, when you think about that, you think of a holistic, right? That includes print and digital and media and social. So if we wanted a holistic campaign, we had to be on the same page with what the original concepting was, what the original review meetings were, and then when you get to the job standpoint, when you turn it over to each of the individual areas for production, that's a different one. So it's where campaign ends at a pre-plan. We're all on the same page, and we get the merchandising people involved as well, and we all land on what the piece looks like and what the content looks like. Then you turn it over to the individual areas for production, and then obviously the in-home or the date that the event goes live. So lots of different screens and certainly different workflows for where we are in the campaign.
Great. And so you can tell from the way that Melanie describes it, a very broad workflow effort. There you can see some more examples of workflow. And then finally, Melanie, if you want to speak to the results, I think we'll move on to close up.
Yeah, we're definitely, it's funny because my husband, because I obviously was a merchant and I went into marketing, and he's like, is this worth it? Because this was it was a year and a half out of my life to get this up and running, and I said, well, it'll be worth it if it works, if it all comes together, and it again, we're still learning and adapting and changing, but now it does get everybody in the same place. There's one place where all the answers are. We created a campaign manager to help traffic and help from a start to finish, just to kind of get people used to it. But we're very happy with the results. Again, are we done? Absolutely not. We certainly have other steps, but it's allowed us to be really more to deal with the complexities that are coming. This slide actually is kind of funny. The picture is really a kind of a change management as well as a system thing. So on the left, that binder is when we closed January 2014, before we were live in the system from a financial standpoint, and to the right is a month later. So again, there's a lot of change management there. We had to convince people that they didn't need all that paper, they didn't need all those records, because you have a system that houses all that. And that wasn't. It was just. It's just a fun picture that we like to play with.
Yeah, great. And so, Melanie, first of all, thank you so much for participating as a case study. I know we're up on time. There's a couple pieces of content that we didn't get through, but you can see our contact information on the screen. And so really, we appreciate your time and the opportunity to share our knowledge with IHAF members. Emily, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you both very much. This was a great presentation. I know you rushed to the end there, but I think either way it was done great. I think the case study is really important for folks to see. I hope all of the listeners enjoyed it today. I will offer up to do a couple of questions here. I'll be respectful of folks' time, but if you want to stay on the line and have Eric and Melanie answer a couple of questions, feel free to send those in now to the questions box on your toolbar. The first question we do have in already is for Melanie. Looking back at what Sage has done over the last 2 years, what would you say are your top words of wisdom or lessons learned for our listeners today?
I would say patience, perseverance, and change. It's not easy, but once you're in and once you're live and people are in that, and you can see that how all that work paid off. It's fantastic. I mean, it was. Obviously we needed Coffee Dunn to help us through this, because this was I didn't even know where to start. But yeah, I would say again, people have to understand that it's not going to look perfect on day 2. So to be patient, but persevere, because in the end, it's 100% worth it.
Great, thank you, Melanie.
Sure.
It doesn't look like any other folks have typed any questions in. Do want to give folks a couple of seconds here, but Eric and Melanie have both been kind enough to share their contact information. I hope if anyone is up against the clock, but would like to ask them a question offline, feel free to do so at any time. Thank you again to the both of you for spending your time with us this afternoon, and to the both of our presenters today and all of our listeners and members. On behalf of the entire team here at IHAF, I hope you all have a great holiday season and Happy New Year. We'll see you all in 2016.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Okay.